days. Honorable members, I'll now put the question, which is that pursuant the provisions of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023 from 7 days to 4 days. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issuance of a sum of money out of the consolidated fund and its application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2024, and to appropriate that sum and a sum voted on account of by the National Assembly for certain purposes, services and purposes, public services and purposes. Order number 10, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bill number 16 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the equitable allocation of revenue raised nationally and among the county governments for the 2023-2024 financial year, the responsibilities of the national and county governments pursuant to such allocation and for connected purposes.
Next.
Order number 11, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of a sum of money out of the Equalization Fund and its application towards the service of the year ending 30th June 2023 to appropriate that sum for certain public basic services and for connected purposes. Order number 12, the Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, second reading.
Yes, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
How are you?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Appropriations Bill, that is, I beg to move the Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, Honorable Speaker.
Be now read a second.
Be now read for a second time. Thank you very much.
So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The essence of this bill that we are moving.
Order, Honorable Ndindi. Honorable members, the bill being moved by the Chair of Budget will be allocated no more than 45 minutes. After he moves and is seconded, I'll give an opportunity to the minority and majority leaders, and if need be one or two more, then we move to order number 13. I'm doing this for the simple reason that the bill is a replica of what you did in the Committee of Ways and Means in the House, and it has no new material that would require extensive debate. But I will see how it goes. I want you to go to Finance Committee latest by 4. Ndindi Nyoro, go, proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for that chance. And for the neatness of the answer, Honorable Speaker, allow me to do it again. That, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Appropriations Bill, that is National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, be read for the second time. Honorable Speaker, the reason why we are introducing this bill, Honorable Speaker, is so that we align the government spending as we come to the close of the financial year, that is 2022-2023, And Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the relevant departmental chairs because they rose up to the occasion and we were able to consider the contents of this bill over the weekend, culminating, Honorable Speaker, to what we were doing even as early as this morning. Honorable Speaker, the bill is not far-reaching because we are just trying to align, as we come to the close of the financial year, to align what the government will actually be collecting as revenue, and we align the same with the expenditure side as we come to the close of the financial year. And Honorable Speaker, some of the issues that we have been able to consider is the absorption rate for various MDAs, because Honorable Speaker, many times we appropriate money, but some of the MDAs may get a huge sizable amount of funds, which, Honorable Speaker, they may not be able to absorb. And as we come to the close of the financial year, we really had to consider those facts that yes, as we come to the close, we have to put monies where they can be absorbed. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is more of realignment of the government physicals so that we close the financial year with a neat budget. Honorable Speaker, as I read previously, the amount we are considering in total, the sum total is shy of 30 billion Kenya shillings, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, in comparison to the size of the budget, it is basically just marginal. Honorable Speaker, some of the areas that we have considered for increment, and Honorable Speaker, I would beg, if it's possible, the members can consult in low tones.
Order. Order, honorable members, Honorable Wamshomba, and your team around there. Tafadhali muongee kwa sauti ya chini. You are disrupting the flow of thought of the member on his feet. Go on.
Yes. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. You know, when the Honorable Member for Kiapa whispers, it is by itself allowed conversation. He's very gifted in public speaking and also in whispers. Honorable Speaker, some of the areas that we considered for increment is, for example, in the sector of water, where one of the projects that have stored for a very long time, called the Dwake Dam, we were able to allocate Kenya shillings 5 billion because they have the absorption capacity as we come to the close of the financial year in June 30th. Honorable Speaker, we have also been able to align a few things in irrigation, in the water sector, in ICT, in security, and several other MDAs in regards to the supplementary estimates number 2. But as I come to the close, because I know we also have very many businesses today that we need to put our thought into and our voice into, I do not wish to belabor the point. But because I have the mic, Honorable Speaker, and some of the things that we said, and especially when we were considering the estimates for 2023, 2024, majority of the members of this House were not here. Allow me, because we are still in the budget process, to highlight below, Honorable Speaker, that even as we consider the supplementary estimates, Honorable Speaker, in the year 2022-2023, through the budget that we read of 3.679 trillion Kenya shillings, there are very important things, Honorable Speaker, that I wish to bring to the attention of the members, and especially because by the time we were moving, majority of us, Honorable Speaker, we are already engaged in other things. Honorable Speaker, in the money that we appropriated, and I want the honorable members to listen, over and above appropriating a huge budget to education, we also appropriated, Honorable Speaker, the money that we are taking to Higher Education Loans Board. We doubled that allocation from 15 billion Kenya shillings to 30 billion Kenya shillings. We were able, Honorable Speaker, to allocate monies for hiring of 8,000 fresh graduates to government internship program, where these 8,000 interns will be paid a stipend of 25,000 Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, in the same budget of 2023-2024, Honorable Speaker, We were also Honorable Speaker, able to allocate monies, Honorable Speaker, to NGCDF, Kenya shillings, 10 billion Kenya shillings, where every constituency here will be getting Kenya shillings 25 billion to Kenya shillings 25 million to Kenya shillings 40 million every financial year. Honorable Speaker, as we move the appropriations bill, which incorporates whatever we were discussing last week, Honorable Speaker, it is important for members to understand that. I only highlighted the issue of the supplementary because it will be coming along, but the bill we are moving, Honorable Speaker, is for the appropriations bill in regards to the debate that we had last week. Honorable Speaker, I wish to request that Honorable Tongoyo seconds this motion.
Tongoyo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to second the appropriation bill, and by approving this bill, it will allow to have the funds appropriated and remitted by the National Treasury to the MDS to enable them perform their duties. So I second, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, Honorable Jared. Order, Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that the appropriation bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable Mbadi, give you 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, I was not present when Committee of Ways and Means were deliberating on various vote heads. But Mr. Speaker, allow me, in the shortest time that you have allocated me, to highlight just a few things. Mr. Speaker, I'm worried about this budget. So worried, because Mr. Speaker, when President Ruto took power, he said that he was going to reduce the budget of 2022-2023 by 300 billion shillings. That did not happen, and instead, what we are seeing today is an increase in the budget from the 2022-2023 budget to 2023-2024, an increase of 544 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. The total budget is rising from 3,055 billion to a total of 3,599 billion, Mr. Speaker. That is without considering the debt rollover. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this budget, and it is broken down into total executive expenditure, parliament, judiciary, and other CFS, the financing of this budget is going to be a challenge, Mr. Speaker, because this country is deluding itself that we can raise ordinary revenue from 1,917 billion in the current financial year to 2,571 billion in the next financial year. That is an increase of 653 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. Very unrealistic, very ambitious, likely not to be realized. The total revenue projected to be collected is going to rise from 2.23 trillion to 2.935 trillion. That's an additional 705 billion. Even with the crazy taxation measures that have been proposed in this House, you can still not realize an increase in collection of revenue to the tune of 700 billion in one single financial year. Mr. Speaker, I know that the average increase in revenue collection has been averaging around 300 billion. Now, if we are not going to be able to collect or able to raise the budget, the revenue by 700 billion, what will happen is either the programs will not be implemented, or if they have to be implemented, it will be at a cost, meaning we are going to increase the budget deficit from the proposed 635 billion to almost close to 1 billion shillings. And Mr. Speaker, that is not far-fetched, because at the moment, from September 30th, Mr. Speaker, to March 31st of this year, in a period of just 6 months, The Kenya Kwanza government has borrowed 689 billion shillings compared to the similar period when President Uhuru was in power, when only 405 billion was raised. So this talk that we hear all the time, that Kenya Kwanza is curtailing and managing debt, it is just hypocritical, it is theoretical, but the actual fact is that Kenya Kwanza is borrowing monies more than what President Kenyatta did borrow. And so we are headed into a situation where this country is going to face financial distress, Mr. Speaker. I want to stop there, Mr. Speaker, but my concern is that this budget is not likely to be financed from the revenue projections that we have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, let me make a few comments on this bill. First and foremost, it's obvious that we are still being too optimistic as a country. And we seem to be doing the same things year in, year out, and expecting different results. Mr. Speaker, looking at the current budget for 2023-2024, what is going to happen is the usual things. One, we are going to start projects which we shall not be able to complete. Two, we are going, where we start projects, we are going to be able to incur further pending bills. And as you can see from the current budget, not much money has been allocated to service the pending bills. We are going to basically be digging a hole to seal another hole. Mr. Speaker, I have always said that the most prudent thing to do when you find yourselves in a situation in which we find ourselves currently is to cut our cloth according to our size. We have failed to do that. We still continue to increase our budget and hoping that we shall get revenues from elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, the other thing you need to do when you are in a similar situation is to basically stop starting new projects which are not emergency, which are not critical, and attempt to complete the old projects. That we are not seeing in this budget, because unless you deal with the pending bills, how will you ever complete the old projects, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, but I am more concerned, as I conclude, I am more concerned, and I've got all tremendous respect and confidence in the chairman and the committee budget. But there's a problem, Mr. Speaker, which we are beginning to see rearing its ugly head in this country. The type of mega corruption cases that we are beginning to see in this country, Mr. Speaker, is a cause for worry. In just mere 7 months or so, we have seen cases of corruption that should worry all of us, beginning with the mosquito nets corruption case. Mr. Speaker, some of us who come from malaria-prone areas do understand the sensitivity of this matter. That we can actually have people in government, some as high places as cabinet, conniving, Mr. Speaker, to siphon money meant to buy mosquito nets. Mr. Speaker, the second issue has been the matter of the condemned sugar. We do not know as yet what became of the matter of the sugar which was condemned and was stolen from our own warehouses. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that should concern this House, if not anything else. Mr. Speaker, the third issue is now the latest scandal, the edible oils scandal, which is running into billions and billions of Kenyan shillings. Mr. Speaker, and there's only one thread running across these scandals: the involvement of people in high places, some in this House, but most of them in the cabinet. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that this House must deal with head on if we were to save this country from sliding into an abyss. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge our committees, especially those committees that do oversight, especially those committees that deal with accounting matters. Please take up these matters with the seriousness it deserves. Because otherwise, if we don't do something urgently and drastically, this term of parliament may go down in history as a term that witnessed the highest number of mega scandals in this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, with those very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I rise to support this appropriations bill. Honorable Speaker, I will restrain myself from speaking to the gallery and answering to the many things that the leader of minority has spoken to, because it is within his right as a leader of minority to play to the gallery and raise issues that may not necessarily be in this appropriations bill. But Honorable Speaker, allow me, because one of the things I've heard being mentioned is the question of monies being allocated in this appropriations bill.
Yes, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the majority leader to term the discussions and the opinions of the minority leader as playing to the gallery? Is that in order?
The minority leader himself is not protesting. Go on.
Honorable Speaker, it's good to indulge that honorable member. He was simply seeking for attention. But I have the minority leader's attention. I don't need his attention. Honorable Speaker, I was saying, speaking to the question of pending bills, Honorable Speaker, in this appropriations bill, Honorable Speaker, because it is simply buttressing what we did during Committee of Supply, and we were all here during Committee of Supply, and I must thank all the members who stayed on here until about 10 p.m. to supply resources to our MDAs. Honorable Speaker, unlike what is being said, it is true that in this appropriations bill and what we supplied to our MDAs, for instance, the largest pending bills are in the road sector. And indeed, all these members in this House, Honorable Speaker, will tell you, in each of our constituencies, we have either a road that was to start that is yet to start, or a road that had started but stalled because of pending bills, Honorable Speaker. And the quantum of those pending bills, if members cared to listen to the chairman of the Budget Appropriations Committee, was a quantum of close to 1 trillion shillings. That means half of the resources we will generate in terms of ordinary revenue could only go towards settlement of pending bills in the road sector, Honorable Speaker. But amidst all the constraints that we have with our resources, Honorable Speaker, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and indeed the House last week in supplied a quantum of 250 billion shillings to the road sector to help start dealing with the question of pending bills in the road sector. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, you will see with time, as at when exchequer releases begin, hopefully after the month of July, Honorable Speaker, if we agree with the chair of the Finance Committee and finish with the finance bill third reading today or in the course of the day tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, and we're able to generate adequate revenues to be able to unlock the question that the leader of minority rightly says, that we have a huge problem of pending bills. That 250 billion shillings to the road sector is not enough. Even after rationalizing all those roads projects that have been committed to, the figure came to about 730 billion. Therefore, it tells you, even if we were to allocate resources, not to deal with new projects, and I just want to inform the House and the leader of minority, that we are not dealing with new road projects, we are dealing with those already committed road projects. And it would take ordinarily, either we commit the entire of our development expenditure to the road sector without having to deal with anything else, or we do what the Budget and Appropriations Committee recommended, that we allocate 250 billion shillings this year. If we perform better in terms of revenue allocation, next year we can do another 300 to 400 billion shillings. And with time, by the third year of this administration, we should be able to have cleared all those pending bills and contracts that have already been committed to, and be able to begin to embark on new projects. Therefore, allow me to just inform the leader of minority that indeed there are no new road projects. We are committed to completing those that were committed contractually before the last regime. If you look at the education sector, Honorable Speaker, and members will remember when we begin this session in January, Our children had just opened school, and there was a crisis on CBC, the junior secondary schools, capitation of junior secondary schools, capitation of those in CBC classes, Honorable Speaker, was a big problem. But in this appropriations bill, we are appropriating a whopping 630-something billion shillings going to the education sector to ensure that CBC is not just something we are talking about, but something that we are actualizing and committing resources to. And it's not just the junior secondary school, even capitation of our day secondary schools and our boarding schools to ensure even our free primary education sector that resources are going to our schools, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there is also money that has been appropriated to the social services sector. And you have seen in the press recently, Honorable Speaker, as much as our media houses have a quarrel to pick with us, and therefore they will go to great lengths to demonize what is not being done or what is supposed to be done, and they will eloquently carry out investigative series on how many octogenarians have not received their cash transfer schemes, but I never see them cover when they are receiving this money. But I want to tell them today, we are appropriating adequate resources to ensure that our elderly and vulnerable in society, Honorable Speaker, are able to access their money, their cash transfer, including orphans and PWDs in our communities that access money from government. We have allocated inadequate resources within the social services sector, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that all these people are able to access their money.
Majority Leader. Yes, Honorable Jared.
I know what Jared wants to say.
Mr. Speaker, this new emerging character of disparaging the media that does nothing but to shine bright light in the dark corners of government, I think should stop, Honorable Speaker.
What is
We
your point of order?
get informed through the media, we get news through the media, and if somebody has a beef to pick with the media, they have professional bodies around the media houses.
What is the
Speaker.
point of order, Jared?
My point of order is to ask the majority leader, together with his surrogates, to stop disparaging the media, Honorable Speaker. The media plays an important role to this country and to the world at large, Honorable Speaker, and I thank you.
Ichungwa, endelea.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to ignore what only warrants to be ignored. Honorable Speaker, in this appropriations bill, in conclusion, Honorable Speaker, we have allocated immense resources to our own pet subject of CDF. And I know, Honorable Speaker, CDF is misconstrued out there to be money that belongs to these members of parliament. But CDF is money that belongs to our voters, the people who have sent us to this house, Honorable Speaker. And the resources that have been devoted to CDF this financial year, Honorable Speaker, will not only go to supplement what has been devoted through the Ministry of Education, that 630 billion shillings going to the Ministry of Education, but also to supplement our bursary schemes, Honorable Speaker, in our constituencies, to ensure that the children who have been committed to schools, who are getting school capitation, that school capitation is not adequate and is not enough. Those children need school bursaries. Honorable Speaker, we are talking about digital hubs in our constituencies. I want to ask members of parliament, now that the government, and I am sure the ICT committee will be briefing members on this, is intent on establishing ICT innovation hubs in every ward in our constituencies, to at least in the next financial year, as we retreat for the short recess, which, Honorable Speaker, I know many of the members will retreat to do their proposals. As you engage with members of the public, it is good to inform members of the public that there are those innovation hubs in each of the wards, so that you also devote in your CDF proposals and budgets a bit of money for construction and equipping of those ICT hubs. Government has, through ICTA, the ICT authority, has adequate equipment in terms of the digital equipment, computers, and also ensuring that you have connectivity in those ICT hubs, so that we also help our children, our young men and women in our constituencies who have no jobs, to be trained under the Jitume program, to be able to access online jobs and be able to work from the ICT hubs and also to work from home and access online jobs even outside the country, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, let me just conclude. I visited SOT Technical in Bomet County, and I don't know if the Member of Parliament is here for Bomet Central. And I was impressed, Honorable Speaker, with the kind of work where you find students, 21 to 24-year-olds, who are working online and earning their $20, $25 an hour, and they are working right from their own classroom in those ICT hubs. And therefore, even with the establishment of all our TVETs in the constituencies that have TVETs, those who are here to start TVETs in their constituency, I also want to encourage you. And I have seen a number of members, I did here during contribution in the second reading of the budget and appropriations report, a number of members pointing out that they have no TVETs in their constituencies. Please, in your CDF allocations this year, allocate money, the 10 million shillings that is required from CDF, NGCDF, so that you get the counterpart funding from the Ministry of Education for those TVETs, and establish these ICT hubs, because they will go a long way into securing job opportunities for millions of our young people who are jobless, many who are well educated, many who are technically tech savvy, and would be able to access these online jobs, Honorable Speaker. And allow me to use this opportunity to inform the people, great people of Kikuyu, that indeed in the next few weeks, the ICT hub at Dogoto Chief's Camp, where I have fabricated a former chief's boardroom into such an ICT hub, Honorable Speaker, will be open. Kikuyu Town ICT hub will be open. Keno Village Polytechnic ICT hub will be open in the next few weeks, and so will be Nachu Technical TVET, Honorable Speaker. And the computers are already on the ground, Honorable Speaker. And as I encourage other members of Parliament to follow suit, because I want to lead by example, Honorable Speaker. That is why I'm speaking to these ICT hubs, because I appreciate that millions of our young people are jobless, and they can access jobs not just through the housing fund levy that we have set up to build houses, Honorable Speaker, that will create jobs, but we can also create jobs through online jobs where people will be able to work right from their homes. Honorable Speaker, with those very many remarks, allow me to support this appropriations bill and urge the House to support it. And hopefully, at the conclusion of this debate, as we get into the finance bill, we shall all rise to the occasion, because what we have appropriated in this appropriations bill is what we shall be financing in the finance bill. And I do hope even the myriad of amendments that I see on the order paper will be towards the goal of helping government realize higher revenues, so that we also don't get deeper into the pit of borrowing, Honorable Speaker. And with those many remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable members, allow me to invite the mover to reply. Is that the mood of the House? Ndindi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I wish to thank every participant of the entire process since we started. This process did not just start on the estimates. We started the process of making the budget for 23-24 last year. We have held public participations. We have held sector working groups. And Honorable Speaker, every participant who has taken part, I really want to thank all of them. Just to recap in a minute, Honorable Speaker, and just to put the record straight, because I see so many figures flying around. The budget that we appropriated money for, and the budget at which, Honorable Speaker, we are debating this bill, is a budget of Kenya shillings, 3.679 trillion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, out of that money, the only monies that you have allocated in terms of deficit, or the monies that you have allocated to spend, which, Honorable Speaker, we intend to borrow, is only Kenya shillings, 718 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, this is a climb down from last financial year, when we had a deficit of 860 billion on the books, but upon assuming the positions that we are in now, and after peruse of government books, we realized 200 billion had been spent at the 223, and therefore the entire deficit was actually 1.1 trillion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, it is important to highlight that among the revenue side, we anticipate to collect Kenya Kenya shillings, 2.57 trillion Kenya shillings. In terms of ordinary revenue, we anticipate to collect or to have or to receive 42 billion Kenya shillings in terms of grant. And on the other side, Honorable Speaker, of expenditure, and I'm just putting the record straight because it is our responsibility, Honorable Speaker, around 986 billion Kenya shillings is actually going to CFS because we are very categorical about allocating enough resources to offset loans so that, Honorable Speaker, we do not continue on the whole of borrowing, but we actually bury the hole by allocating as much money as possible in terms of repayment of debts, and that is why in the kitty of CFS, we allocated Kenya shillings 986 billion. Honorable Speaker, we have also increased the allocations to our counties. The equitable share, we enhanced from 370 billion to 385 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, I know there have been issues with the exchequer, but Honorable Speaker, this has been most because of the jittery markets we have, and especially across foreign markets, which we have not been able to realize the monies we had anticipated to borrow for the last financial year. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we had to resort to domestic markets, where again we are paying a premium in terms of interest rates. So the issues that has been there in terms of exchequer, they need interventions, not policies, and we have been doing that. Honorable Speaker, as I wind up, just again to put the record straight, we allocated the entire allocation of 2.3 billion Kenya shillings for the national government. Honorable Speaker, 27.4% of that amount we allocated to education, out of which we have doubled allocation to health. We have also, Honorable Speaker, increased capitation for JSS by 10 billion Kenya shillings, Honorable Speaker. Something else I would want to highlight as I come to the close. All the members here who have constructed KMTCs through NGCDF, there are 21 of them that are not functional. We have allocated 1 billion Kenya shillings into KMTC to hire additional lecturers and staff. We have also allocated monies to operationalize all the 21, Honorable Speaker, KMTCs. There are 181 markets that were started by former President Mwai Kibaki through the ESP program. Honorable Speaker, we have allocated 3 billion Kenya shillings for all the entire 181 markets so that Kenyans can start realizing the utility of those markets. Honorable Speaker, just again for members to be...
Junet, order. What is the point of order, Junet?
Speaker, I wanted to bring to the attention of the Chair Budget Committee that, Mr. Speaker, doing the appropriation is one thing, but having the real money is another thing, Mr. Speaker. He has sold here a rosy, Mr. Speaker, a heavenly affair that we have given 1 billion to this man, 2 billion to that lady. But, Mr. Speaker, what is the level of absorption, Mr. Speaker? Will this money really come to the...
He's an optimist, you are a pessimist. That makes the
Honorable Speaker, in answering Honorable Junet, as I started the moving of this bill, if you realized, I actually took the first minutes to talk about the supplementary estimates too. It was deliberate. It was deliberate to show that there are only marginal changes that we are making to the budget we are exiting. And we also anticipate to have actually almost no changes in the budget of 2023-2024 because we have been very modest, we have been very realistic in the projection of revenues. But as I come to the close, Honorable Speaker, it is good to also highlight that we allocated Kenya shillings, 5 billion Kenya shillings to fertilizer subsidy so that our farmers, and I want to assure the farmers of Kenya from this house, that as we go to the next season, both the small season and the other one, Honorable Speaker, the Kenyan farmers will be buying fertilizer at a cheaper price than they bought last season, Honorable Speaker, because we have allocated enough monies for the subsidy. Honorable Speaker, there are very many other good things that we have allocated in that budget, 250 billion Kenya shillings in terms of roads, and also, Honorable Speaker, an unprecedented amount of figure or funds that will be going to power and especially rural electrification. Honorable Speaker, as we move forward, we'll be seeking to enlarge our revenue bracket, Honorable Speaker, by especially necessitating the MDAs that can collect A&A to be able to optimize, Honorable Speaker, and we are already doing that through the allocations and also through policies. Honorable Speaker, I wish to thank all members who have taken part, and I wish and I beg to reply. Thank you very much.
I now wish to put the question, which is the Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023, be now read the second time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issuance of a sum of money out of the consolidated fund and its application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2024, and to appropriate the sum and a sum voted on account by the National Assembly for certain public services and purposes.
Next order. Yes, Honorable Mbadi, what is the issue?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I realized that the second order in the order paper is going to be the Committee of the Whole House on the Finance Bill.
We've not reached there yet.
Mr. Speaker, I was raising it because I know once you call for the Committee of the Whole House, the House is supposed to adjourn. But I wanted to raise this point over there so that I get your ruling on this matter, Mr. Speaker, so that when we move to the Committee of the Whole House, then the matters will have been dispensed with. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, this House has set traditions before. The Speaker has ruled that matters of constitutionality, matters of legality, and matters of procedure, Mr. Speaker, can be raised at any time in the course of debating a bill. Mr. Speaker, Article 259 actually speaks to the interpretation of the Constitution, and that it should be done in a manner that would promote its purposes, values, principles, and advance the rule of law and contribute to good governance. Mr. Speaker, our standing order is actually a creation, or standing orders are a creation of our Constitution.
Order, Honorable Mbadi. Order. Take your seat. The matter you are raising was actually raised by the distinguished member for Arieda on Thursday. I promised to give a response to it, and I have a ruling I want to deliver on it. So you're actually flogging a dead horse. It is a matter that is already on Hansard, and the Honorable Otienda Amolo prosecuted it very well. I can see you just headed the same direction, so I will stop you there and allow me to move on to give my response to what Honorable Otienda Amolo raised. Order, Honorable members. First, bring to your attention, Honorable members, to the availability of a supplemental order paper that should be circulated. The reason I'm told, because we have members' amendments to the finance bill, some that were received late, out of time, but were accommodated because they wanted to accommodate as many of you as we can. So you can look at the supplemental order paper, and from here we'll proceed on the basis of that. I have got a ruling and a communication to make. Thereafter, the majority leader will move a procedural motion to extend your sitting time. And given the enormity and the interest in the matter of the finance bill, House Business Committee today directed that where possible, today you'll sit up to the end of the day, tomorrow morning we'll put aside. Pardon? It is out of order to speak to the chair when the chair is making a communication. We will then tomorrow morning, if we will not have finished with the finance bill, put aside your private member's business to deal with it. If you will not have finished by the afternoon, again, we'll have a procedural motion for you to sit up to the end of the day. The end of the day means midnight. That's when the day ends. And if you do not finish, then you have Thursday. The House Business Committee has directed that if there is need, a procedural motion will be moved for you to sit on Thursday morning up to 1 o'clock, and the afternoon, if possible, up to the end of the day. Should you not finish, then I'll give you further direction. Honorable members, you will recall that during the afternoon sitting of Thursday, 15th June 2023, before the budget presentation by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, the Honorable Otienda Amolo, Senior Council MP, rose on a point of order and sought procedural guidance on adherence with the Standing Order 244C with regard to the introduction, consideration and passage of the Finance Bill 2023 by the House. It was the contention of the Honourable Member that Standing Order 244C outlines a particular order requiring the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make a pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government and thereafter present a legislative proposal which is published and introduced as a finance bill. According to the member, a strict reading of Standing Order 244C would therefore indicate that the House had jumped the gun by concluding the second reading of the finance bill before the appearance of the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. Members at the bar, take your seats. The nearest seat. The nearest seat. Honourable members, at the time I did indicate to the Honourable Otienda Amolo that Standing Order 244C had been rendered negatory by a court decision and offered to share the relevant judgment after the sitting. Honourable members, following the budget presentation by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, I did receive inquiries and representations from several members of the House relating to the matter raised by the Honourable Member for Areda. Given the turn of events, I have decided to issue this particular guidance to the House. Honourable members, from the inquiries and representations received, I have isolated two issues in relation to the consideration of the finance bill that require clarification. These are: one, the effect of the court judgment alluded to in my response to the Honourable Otienda Amolo to the manner of considering and passing of a finance bill, the procedure applicable to the consideration of a finance bill in light of the provisions of Section 39A and 40 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and Standing Order 244C, presentation of the budget statement on the consideration of the finance bill, of a finance bill. With regard to the first issue, the court judgment that I alluded to relates to a matter filed by the Honorable Senator Okiya Omtatah challenging the constitutionality of the Provisional Collection of Taxes and Duties Act. As per the practice obtaining in 2018, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury would submit a finance bill after the passage of the budget estimates and on the same day that he or she made a budget speech in Parliament. Pursuant to the then Standing Order 245, the House was required to pass a finance bill within 90 days of the passage of an appropriation bill. In the interim, the House would consider and pass a motion operationalizing all the revenue-raising measures proposed in a finance bill for the period between its publication and its passage, in line with the Provisional Collection of Taxes and Duties Act 1959. A point of order raised by the member for Waraka, the Honorable Tom Joseph Kajwang, MP, during the afternoon sitting of the House on 5th July 2018 may have precipitated the matter filed by the Honorable Senator Omtata. At the time, the Honorable Kajwang queried the propriety of operationalizing all the revenue-raising measures proposed in a finance bill in line with the Provisional Collection of Taxes and Duties Act 1959, in light of the provisions of the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act 2012. The Hansard records that several current members of the House ventilated on the point raised by the Honorable Kajwang then, including the Majority Leader, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, MGH MP, the Honorable John Mbadi, and the Honorable Makali Mulu MP. The High Court issued its judgment in Okio Mtata Okoiti versus Cabinet Secretary, National Treasurer, and three others, 2018 KLR, Kenya Law Reports, on 19 September 2018, and gave the following orders, and I quote: a declaration that by presenting the Finance Bill 2018 to the National Assembly on 14th June 2018, while the financial calendar ends on 30th June 2018, the Cabinet Secretary violated Section 37 of the Public Finance Management Act 2018, which sets the 30th April deadline for the Cabinet Secretary to table the budget estimates and any other bills. Any other bills required to implement the national government budget for approval by the National Assembly. Order, Honorable Women Rep Kisi and your colleague. You are distracting the chair from delivering the ruling. A declaration that the Provisional Collection of Taxes and Duties Act number 44 of 1959, Chapter 415 of the Laws of Kenya is unconstitutional and therefore invalid, null, and void. A declaration that the Finance Bill 2018 or any parts or provisions thereof, including on taxation, cannot be implemented before the bill becomes the Finance Act and it goes through the parliamentary legislative process laid out in the Constitution for approval and adoption by Parliament and assent by the President. Arising from these orders of the Court and ostensibly informed by the debate that ensued on the point raised on the propriety of approving provisional collection of taxes and duties, the House subsequently amended the Public Finance Management Act in July 2019 through Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Act 2019 to introduce Section 39A in the Act. The section requires the Cabinet Secretary to submit the Finance Bill before 30th April every year and that it be passed before the end of the financial year on 30th June. The section clarified the manner in which a finance bill ought to be introduced, considered and passed by the House. It provides as follows, and I quote: the Cabinet Secretary shall submit to the National Assembly on or before 30th April the Finance Bill setting out the revenue-raising measures for the national government. 2. Following submission of the Finance Bill by the Cabinet Secretary, the relevant committee of the National Assembly shall introduce the bill in the National Assembly. 3. The National Assembly shall consider and pass the Finance Bill with or without amendments in time for it to be presented for assent by 30th June each year. Any recommendations made by the relevant committee of the National Assembly or resolution passed by the National Assembly on revenue matters shall: A, ensure that the total amount of revenue raised is consistent with the approved fiscal framework. B, take into account the principles of equity, certainty, and ease of collection. C, consider the impact of the proposed changes on the composition of the tax revenue with reference to direct and indirect taxes. D, consider domestic, regional, and international tax trends. E, consider the impact on development, investment, employment, and economic growth. F, take into account the recommendations of the Cabinet Secretary as provided under Article 114 of the Constitution. And G, take into account the taxation and all other tariff arrangements and obligations that the Kenya has ratified, including taxation and tariff arrangements under the East African Community Treaty. This leads us to the second issue of an apparent variance in the provision of Standing Order 244C and the dictates of the judgment and the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Honorable members, as I had indicated, my attention was drawn to the existence of an apparent variance in the provisions of Section 39A and Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 with regard to the manner of introduction and consideration of a finance bill. Section 40 of the Act provides as follows. Each financial year, the Cabinet Secretary shall, with the approval of Cabinet, make a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government. 2, in making the pronouncement under Section 1, the Cabinet Secretary shall take into account any regional or international agreements that Kenya has ratified, including the East African Community Treaty, and where such agreements prescribe the date when the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures are to be pronounced, the Cabinet Secretary shall ensure that the measures are pronounced on the appointed date. On the same date that the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures are pronounced, the Cabinet Secretary shall submit to Parliament a legislative proposal setting out the revenue-raising measures for the national government together with a policy statement expounding on those measures. Following the submission of the legislative proposal of the Cabinet Secretary, the relevant committee of the National Assembly shall introduce a finance bill in the National Assembly. Any of the recommendations made by the relevant committee of the National Assembly or adopted by the National Assembly on revenue matters shall A, ensure that the total amount of revenue raised is consistent with the approved fiscal framework and division of Revenue Act, take into account the principles of equity and ease of collection, consider the impact of proposed changes on composition of the tax revenue with reference to the direct and indirect taxes, consider domestic, regional, and international tax trends, consider the impact on development, investment, employment, and domestic growth, take into account the recommendations of the Cabinet Secretary and Article 114 of the Constitution, and take into account the taxation and other tariff agreements and obligations that Kenya has ratified, including taxation and tariff agreements under the community. The recommendation of the Cabinet Secretary in subsection 5F shall be included in the report and tabled in the National Assembly. A plain reading of Section 43 and 44 of the Act indicates that the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning is required to submit a legislative proposal setting out the revenue-raising measures for the national government on the same day that he or she makes a pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures. This would seem to be at variance with the express obligation under the more recent Section 39A, which requires that the Cabinet Secretary to submit a finance bill to the House not later than 30th April every year, in compliance with the orders of the court in Okio Mtato Koiti versus Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, and 3 others. Take your seats, members. The nearest seat, Honorable Kwame, the nearest seat. Well done, that is the nearest you can find. Honorable members, in my view, a purposive interpretation to bridge the apparent conflict between the two provisions requires the application of established principles of statutory interpretation and reference to the practice, precedent, and conduct of the Cabinet Secretary and House since the court judgment was issued. Honorable members, it's a canon of statutory interpretation that when faced with conflicting provisions, preference must be given to a specific provision as opposed to a general provision. Additionally, the last in time principle, where the most recent addition to a statute is given precedence over a provision that was enacted earlier, should be applied. From my reading of Section 39A and Section 43 and 4, it is noteworthy that Section 39A specifically refers to the introduction, consideration, and passage of a finance bill. On the other hand, the provisions of Section 43 and 4 only generally refer to a legislative proposal. Additionally, Section 39A is the most recent addition to the Act and represents the most specific and current position of the House on the manner of consideration of a finance bill. Honorable members, the practice and conduct of the Cabinet Secretary and the House since the decision in Okiya Mtata Okoiti versus Cabinet Secretary, National Treasurer, and 3 others, 2018 Kenya Law Reports, and the amendment of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 has been consistent. Notably, in 2020, the Cabinet Secretary submitted the finance bill together with the budget estimates on 30th April 2020. The bill was published on 5th May 2020 and was considered and passed by the House on 23rd June 2020. It was assented to by the President on 30th June 2020. The Cabinet Secretary presented the budget statement for the financial year 2021 on 11th June 2020, well after the publication of the bill. In 2021, the Cabinet Secretary submitted the finance bill together with the budget estimates on 29th April 2021. The bill was published on 5th May 2021 and was considered and passed by the House on 24th June 2021. The particular bill was assented to by the President on 29th June 2021. The Cabinet Secretary presented the budget statement for the financial year 21-22 on 10th June 2021, well after the publication of the bill. In 2022, on account of the general elections scheduled for August 2022, the Cabinet Secretary submitted the finance bill together with the budget estimates on 7th April 2022. This was on the same date that he presented the budget statement in the House. The bill was published on 8th April 2022 and was considered and passed by the House on 7th June 2022. In keeping with the provision of Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 and the new court judgment, the Finance Bill 2022 was assented to by the President on 21st June 2022. Honorable members, from the foregoing, it's clearly apparent that the Cabinet Secretary and the House have adhered to the letter of the orders of the court in Okiya Mtata Okoiti versus Cabinet Secretary, National Treasurer, and 3 others, 2018 Kenya Law Reports, and Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012. This clearly signifies that Section 39A of the Public Finance Act 2012 is the operative provision with regard to the introduction, consideration, and passage of a finance bill. Honorable members, the third issue was with regard to the effect of the presentation of the budget statement on the consideration of a finance bill. Section 40 of the Public Finance Management 2012 requires the Cabinet Secretary to make a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures of the national government. In doing so, the Cabinet Secretary is required to take into account international obligations entered into under the East African Community Treaty. The House is aware that the East African Community Partner States have agreed to present and table their budget statements to their respective parliaments every second Thursday of June. It is largely a ceremonial exercise which, particularly in our case, does not take away that all documentation relating to the budget is required to be submitted well in advance of the presentation of the budget statement. Indeed, as members are aware, no question or comment is permitted during the presentation of the statement. As a budget-making house, we are seized of the estimates and the finance bill latest the 30th of April every year. Save for compliance with the applicable statutory timelines, The House is left to its own devices on how to consider the budget documents submitted to it. The House is under an obligation to prioritize the consideration of a finance bill with a view of passing it before the lapse of the 30th June deadline imposed by Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012. It should not be lost to honorable members that the procedures of the House cannot be left to the whim of another arm of government. The House is therefore at liberty to prioritize consideration of a finance bill before or after the presentation of the budget statement by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. As I conclude, I note that the variance in the sections 39A, 43 and 4 of the Public Finance Management Act extends Standing Order 244C, which I gave rise to the point raised by the Honourable Member for Arieda. The Honourable Otienda Molo, EBS Senior Counsel MP. The Standing Order does not take into account provisions of Section 39A and the requirement for the submission and passage of the Finance Bill before 30th of April and 30th June, respectively, every year. Honourable members, having guided that Section 39A is the operative provision with regard to the consideration of a finance bill, I direct the Procedure and Rules and House Rules Committee to note the variance and include the standing order in the items earmarked for review when it next proposes amendments to the standing orders. In summary, therefore, honorable members, my guidance is as follows. Section 39 of the Public Finance Act 2012 requires the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to submit the finance bill before 30th April every year and that the bill be passed before the end of the financial year on 30th June. The section governs the manner in which a finance bill ought to be introduced, considered, and passed by the House. 2, it is a canon of statutory interpretation that when faced with conflicting provisions, preference must be given to a specific provision as opposed to a general provision. Additionally, the last-in-time principle where the most recent addition to a statute is given precedence over a provision that was enacted earlier should be applied. Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 specifically refers to the introduction, consideration, and passage of a finance bill and represents the most specific and current position of the House on the manner of consideration of a finance bill. That the Cabinet Secretary and the House have consistently adhered to the orders of the court in Onkio Mtata, Okoiti versus Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, and 3 others, 2018 Kenya Law Reports, and Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012. This clearly signifies that Section 39A of the Public Finance Act 2012 is the operative provision with regard to the introduction, consideration, and passage of a finance bill. That the House is under an obligation to prioritize the consideration of a finance bill with a view of passing it before the lapse of the June 30th deadline imposed by Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012. The House is therefore at liberty to prioritize consideration of the finance bill before or after the presentation of a budget statement by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury. That the Procedure and House Rules Committee notes the variance between Standing Order 244 and Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act and include the standing order in the items earmarked for review when it next proposes amendments to the standing orders. The House is guided accordingly. And allow me to thank the Honorable Otienda Molo for raising the issue so that we can give clarity on the matter going to the future. Thank you. Ordinarily we don't debate or comment on the ruling and direction of the chair. We will let it lie there. Honorable Otienda Molo, let the chips lie where they fell. Otienda Molo.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I actually just wanted to thank you. Okay. But in so doing, I wanted to let the majority leader know, because when we raised this matter, he threw words as he usually does, alleging that I was part of the case that you've actually alluded to. So I wanted him to know that I was not part of the case and I was not aware of it. But Mr. Speaker, secondly, I take your guidance, and I think the House Business Committee and the House Rules Committee should take your guidance very seriously. We have amended our standing order twice since that decision of the court on 6th of June 2020 and 7th of June 2022. This should have been factored. But last, Mr. Speaker, because the Speaker is always right, Mr. Speaker, I urge that the House Rules Committee, in considering your guidance, do actually consider the fact that although the decision says that the matter must be published and introduced, it does not say it must be debated before the budget. I want to suggest that it would be in order to have the budget, then the contents of it are then debated in the finance bill. That is, not to bring the second reading before the budget, so that the budget is heard, then we have the second reading, which is the debate, then we move logically, Mr. Speaker. But lastly, Mr. Speaker, I do now have a point of order on the next business, which is order number 13.
Order, Honorable Tiende. Order, Honorable Tiende. You are certainly taking unhelpful shortcuts. Honorable members, I will not allow you, Honorable Bandi. I have given order, Honorable Bandi. This matter was raised by Honorable Tiende. I've bent backwards to allow you to make a comment, and I have thanked him for raising a matter that goes to align the Act with our standing orders in the next review. You will present your views to the committee when it meets. Honorable members, before we go to the committee of the whole, I want to invite the majority leader to move a procedural motion on the sitting time. Thereafter, I'll give you some guidance on how to proceed in the committee of the whole before we go into the committee. Majority leader.
Procedural motion, extension of sitting time.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, because when you gave the Honorable Tiende Molo the right of reply, he did mention my name. Just to clarify to him that whatever I said, because it was not on record, was not in bad faith. Because I hear you severally refer to the Honorable Tiende Molo as senior counsel, and I expected the senior counsel he would be privy to matters that are in the courts, and therefore ordinarily senior counsel will know what issues are in the court, especially in court weighty matters like that issue of the Umtata case, petition 253 of 2018. Honorable Speaker, allow me to move that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 33A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House today, Tuesday 20th June 2023, be reached before conclusion of the business appearing under order number 14 of today's order paper, being Committee of the Whole House on the Finance Bill 2023, the sitting of the House shall stand extended until the conclusion of the said debate. And Honorable Speaker, I don't need to say much about this, because as you alluded, it's something we discussed in the House Business Committee, and the House Business Committee did direct that we have this procedural motion for today, tomorrow, and Thursday, as you have rightly communicated earlier. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Let me ask the Honorable Junet Mohammed to second.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to second, but seconding Mr. Speaker, as you said, or as you directed in the House Business, we discussed in the House Business Committee that there is a lot of business before us. But Mr. Speaker, Kenyans must know that members of parliament are working. There are no other people in this country who sit up to midnight to do work other than members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many times Many times members of parliament are bashed outside there, that oh, they earn for nothing, they earn a lot of allowances, they earn this and that. These are the only people, Mr. Speaker, who sit up to midnight to do the business for this country, Mr. Speaker. And when we are sitting up to midnight, there is no allowance. We are doing it for free, Mr. Speaker, because we want to serve our country. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to beseech members to stay. There is a lot of food, I'm told, at the cafeteria. You can eat, you can drink a lot of water, and then those who have other business after house, they can suspend it for today until another day, so that we can conclude these financial businesses of the country properly, Mr. Speaker, so that Kenyans can have money in their pockets, if at all it will be. But myself, I doubt. But thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Junet. Honorable members, I propose the question, which is that, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 33A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House today, Tuesday, 20th June 2023, be reached before conclusion of the business appearing under order number 14 of today's order paper, being Committee of the Whole House on the Finance Bill 2023, the sitting of the House shall stand extended until the conclusion of the said business. I now put the question. You want to contribute on this? Is it the mood of the House that we put the question? And now put the question. You can respond without drama. That pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 33A, this House orders that should the time appointed for adjournment of the House today, Tuesday, 20th June 2023, be reached before conclusion of the business appearing under order number 14 of today's order paper, being Committee of the Whole House on the Finance Bill 2023, the sitting of the House shall stand extended until the conclusion of the said business. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. Honorable members, before we get to the committee, allow me to give some guidance on consideration of proposed amendments to the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023. Honorable members, this communication relates to the business appearing under Order 14 in today's supplementary order paper, Tuesday, 20th, 2023, being Committee of the Whole House on the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023. Before the House proceeds with the Committee of the Whole House, I wish to provide guidance relating to the consideration of the proposed amendments at the Committee of the Whole House. Honorable members, you may recall that on Thursday, 15th June 2023, after conclusion of second reading of the said bill, I did notify the House that members desirous of proposing amendments to the Finance Bill 2023 were at liberty to submit the amendments to the clerk in the manner provided for in the standing orders. Honorable members, Standing Order 133, procedure in Committee of the Whole House on a bill provides as follows with respect to the submission of amendments on bills. No amendment shall be moved to any part of a bill by any member other than the member in charge of the bill, unless written notification of the amendment shall have been given to the clerk 24 hours before the commencement of the sitting, at which that part of the bill is to be considered in the committee. In this regard, honorable members, at the close of the timeline prescribed in Standing Order 133-2, the clerk had received several proposed amendments to the said bill, originating from the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, other select committees, and individual members. Indeed, as you may have observed, the notices annexed to today's order paper contain several amendments that have been proposed to the said bill. For certainty, honorable members, other than the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, the following chairpersons of committees and individual members have proposed amendments. The Chairperson Select Committee on Delegated Legislation, the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Blue Economy, Water and Irrigation, the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure, the Honorable Samuel Atandi, MP, the Honorable Ditmas Barasa, MP, the Honorable John Waluke, MP, the Honorable Dr. Undo Ojambo, MP, the Honorable Lesuda Naisula, MP, the Honorable Mohammed Daud, MP, the Honorable Jared Okello, MP, the Honorable Caleb Amis, MP, the Honorable Dr. James Nyikal, MP, the Honorable Dr. Makali Mule, MP, the Honorable Anton Oluoch, MP, the Honorable Innocent Mugabe, MP, the Honorable Wanami Wamboka, MP, the Honorable Peter Kaluma, MP, the Honorable Majimbo Kalasinga, MP, the Honorable Robert Mbui, CBS, MP, the Honorable Caleb Mutiso, MP, and the Honorable Geoffrey Ruku, MP. Honorable members, as you may be aware, it is now an established practice under the Constitution that when considering any matter that has a financial implication on public funds, the House is bound by the provisions of Article 1142 of the Constitution. For clarity, Article 1142 of the Constitution provides, and I quote, if in the opinion of the Speaker and of the National Assembly, a motion makes provision for a matter listed in the definition of a money bill, the Assembly may proceed only in accordance with the recommendation of the relevant committee after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. Honorable members, under Clause 3 of Article 114, a money bill includes matters that contain provisions dealing with inter alia taxation, the imposition of charges on a public fund, the appropriation, receipt, custody, investment or issue of public money, and the raising and guaranteeing of any loan or its repayment. In this regard, a finance bill being one that deals with taxation is clearly a money bill. Honorable members, therefore, consideration of the Finance Bill 2023 squarely falls within the confines of Article 114 of the Constitution and other provisions relating to processing of legislation in the House. The provisions of Article 114 of the Constitution are also anchored in Section 39A of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, which states in part, and I quote, Section 39A, submission, consideration, and passing of finance bill. Any recommendations made by the relevant committee of the National Assembly or resolution passed by the National Assembly on revenue matters shall consider the impact of the proposed changes on the composition of the tax revenue with reference to direct and indirect taxes, consider domestic, regional, and international tax trends, consider the impact on development, investment, employment, and economic growth, take into account the recommendations of the Cabinet Secretary as provided under Article 114 of the Constitution, and take into account the taxation and other tariff arrangements and obligations that Kenya has ratified, including taxation and tariff arrangements under the East African Community Treaty. Additional honorable members, Standing Order 133.5 provides that no amendment shall be permitted to be moved if the amendment deals with a different subject or proposes to unreasonably or unduly expand the subject of the bill, or is not appropriate or is not in logical sequence to the subject matter of the bill. In this regard, I have analyzed the amendments proposed to the Finance Bill 2023 and noted that some contain proposals touching on matters listed in the definition of a money bill pursuant to the provisions of Article 114 of the Constitution. For the record, the amendments proposed by the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning are not part of those that I have isolated for guidance, as they were processed in the manner contemplated under Article 114 of the Constitution. Having applied my mind on various proposed amendments, I have determined that certain amendments are either similar to or they are fully accommodated by those proposed by the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. In this regard, such amendments will be proceeded with in the Committee of the Whole House. On the other hand, honorable members, there are proposed amendments that, in my opinion, fall within the meaning of a money bill in terms of Article 114 of the Constitution. As you may have clearly noticed in the order paper, I directed the clerk to publish such amendments with a disclaimer subject to provisions of Article 114 of the Constitution placed under each of the affected amendments. As stated earlier, honorable members, whenever a motion or a proposed amendment is subjected to Article 114 of the Constitution, it's expected that such proposal may only be proceeded with if there is concurrence of the National Treasury through the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. In the absence of the evidence that the affected amendments were processed in the manner contemplated in Article 114 of the Constitution, the Speaker is left with no option but to direct that the Committee of the House shall not consider any of the amendments or parts of amendments that have been published in the order paper with a disclaimer. Consequently, members should note that a member seeking to delete a clause need not have an amendment proposing the deletion of a clause. This is because a member is only required to raise and oppose a clause as published in the bill. This effectively enables any member to prosecute his or her opposition to a clause despite the requirements of Article 114 of the Constitution. Further, honorable members, I hasten to inform the House that all proposed amendments for which requirements of 114 of the Constitution do not apply are annexed in the order paper. Honorable members, a number of proposed amendments have since been received from 3 members, namely the Honorable Joshua Kandia MP, the Honorable George Sunguya MP, and the Honorable Basil Ngui MP, outside the time provided for in the standing orders. For clarity, Standing Order 133 provides as follows: no amendment shall be moved to any part of a bill by any member other than the member in charge of the bill unless written notification of the amendment shall have been given to the clerk 24 hours before the commencement of the sitting at which that part of the bill is to be considered in committee. The House will therefore note that the proposed amendments are time-barred, those 3. However, I note that some of the amendments have been incorporated in the amendments proposed by the Committee on Finance. Honorable members, I give this direction with full consciousness that the intention of Article 114 of the Constitution is not to curtail the legislative mandate of the House. The article merely seeks to ensure that inasmuch as this House reserves the power to determine revenue-raising measures, it does not commit the executive without taking cognizance of the fiscal policy and considerations of the national government. The House is accordingly guided. I thank you. Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to on Standing Order 131. But before I go there, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that before I go there, Mr. Speaker, yes, I want to say that just as I mentioned earlier today in the House Business Committee, Mr. Speaker, our understanding of the provisions of Article 114, Sub-Article 2, is that the House does not require the concurrence of the Cabinet Secretary, but simply requires to take into consideration the views of the Cabinet Secretary, which views it can either accept or reject. Mr. Speaker, for that purpose, Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that we can still prosecute all the proposed amendments. Mr. Speaker, I want to go to the second issue, if you may listen, if you may give me attention.
Yes.
If members could give me attention.
Order, honorable members. You will listen to the Minority Leader in silence.
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 131, and I want to read it for the avoidance of doubt. And as I do so, Mr. Speaker, this notion that we are in a hurry should also be dispensed with, because I don't think we are in a hurry. We have all the time to deal with the issues.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. No. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 131. Standing Order 131. Provides that where a bill has been read a second time and before commencement of the Committee of the Whole, as we are about to do, Mr. Speaker, amendments have been proposed to it, which in the opinion of the Speaker require harmonization. The Speaker may direct any member proposing an amendment to the bill to appear before the relevant departmental committee dealing with the subject matter of the bill to present his or her proposed amendments, and the committee shall submit a report to the House on the result of the exercise before the committee of the whole House is taken. Mr. Speaker, you will notice from the Standing Order 131 that the amendments that have been proposed go to the core of the bill, and some have got far-reaching ramifications. I just want to plead with you, because we haven't been told if at all a window was provided to the Committee on Finance, chaired ably by Honorable Kimani Kuria, to undertake this harmonization process. In fact, in parliamentary parlance, it is referred to as winnowing. That would then make the work of the whole House easier, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is much more to it, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, in the past, previous speakers, and in particular Speaker J.B. Muturi, has ruled when faced with similar situations where there have been very many amendment proposals to a bill. He has ruled that the winnowing exercise be undertaken before the Committee of the Whole can commence. But he has even gone further, Mr. Speaker. If you go to Article 118 of the Constitution, Article 118 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, imposes a duty on this House, without reading it, imposes a duty on this House to undertake proper public participation on any bill before it can be dispensed with or before it can be processed. So, Speaker, the upshot of this, and again this is buttressed by Standing Order 127.3, which I will read. 127.3, Mr. Speaker, and I seek members' indulgence. 127.3, the department committee to which a bill is committed shall facilitate public participation on the bill through an appropriate mechanism, including B, holding public hearings, and many other things. The Speaker, then going by the number of amendments being proposed, firstly by the Committee on Finance, and secondly by various other members and chairs of other committees, it would appear that the character of this bill is likely to change in a comprehensive manner, Mr. Speaker. And we are likely to be transacting business on matters which the public have not been given an opportunity to make their contribution. In other words, on a matter on which the public has not participated, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to just give two examples of bills which had not only been referred back to the Committee for Harmonization, which is winnowing, but actually were ordered to be republished by the Honorable Speaker J.B. Muturi. So, Speaker, one such bill is the gaming bill, Bill number 35 of 2019. The second bill is the Universities Amendment Bill of 2021. In those two instances, in respect of those two bills, Speaker Muturi, having assessed the enormity of the proposed amendments and the likelihood of them changing fundamentally the character of the original bill, and bearing in mind the requirements and the dictates of Article 118 of the Constitution on public participation, buttressed by Standing Order 127.3, did direct that the bills not only be harmonized, but actually be republished before the House could transact them. Mr. Speaker, in the same vein, I want to plead with you, because 30th of June is still too far away, Mr. Speaker. The House can find a mechanism of navigating through this process, but we cannot circumvent a very cardinal process, a very cardinal principle in the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which is public participation under Article 118, Mr. Speaker. By simply rushing through this process, Mr. Speaker, it is my submission that this bill requires not only a harmonization process, but actually requires to be republished, having thought that the public can be given adequate time and opportunity to participate. Mr. Speaker, I submit. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and may thank the Leader of Minority for raising those issues. However, Honorable Speaker, a number of the issues that have been touched on by the Leader of Minority are not accurate. Because, Honorable Speaker, I have been in this House for the last almost 11, 12 years with the Leader of Minority. We joined this House together. And he knows for a fact, because he has alluded to previous rulings by Speaker J.B. Muturi and precedents set by Speaker J.B. Muturi. The Leader of Minority knows for a fact there is not any single moment that Speaker Muturi or indeed any other speaker in the history of this House has allowed the process of winnowing alluded to Understanding Order 131 on money bills. That is a fact, and the Leader of Minority knows that is a fact. Winnowing has been done on other bills except money bills that are not subject to Article 114 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, in view of that, Honorable Speaker, that's what I was saying, Honorable Speaker, it is not accurate what the Leader of Minority is saying. And indeed, if this was not a money bill, a winnowing process would help to enable the House to process the myriad of amendments that are similar in a faster way. But on money bills, the Leader of Minority, with all due respect, knows in the history of this House, it has never happened, because money bills are subject to the provisions of Article 114. Two, Honorable Speaker, this is not the first finance bill we are processing as a House. Neither is it the last. But filibustering is also not the first time we have seen it. And it's not the last time we have seen it, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I hear the Honorable Leader of Minority say that we don't need the concurrence of the National Treasury. And to an extent, I agree with him. We are not under the directions of the National Treasury at all. But I want to confirm that in line with the provisions of Article 114 of the Constitution, the Chair of the Finance Committee has been able to engage, and even after the House Business Committee this morning, Honorable Speaker, I was in a meeting with the Chair of the Finance Committee and a whole delegation from the National Treasury to consider all the amendments that have been proposed both by the committee, and indeed, I can tell you there were clauses, amendments that had been proposed by the committee, which on consultation with the National Treasury, some were dropped. There are amendments. If you go through the supplementary order paper, Honorable Speaker, you will see the amendments by the member for Homa Bay, the Honorable Kaluma, that have been allowed following that consultation. There are amendments by the Honorable Oundo, Honorable Naisula, who is seated right at the back, Honorable Mbui, Honorable Aluoch, Honorable Mule. Therefore, there are myriad of many amendments that have been allowed following that consultation. And therefore, that's why I was saying it may not necessarily be very accurate to say that there are those that have been condemned and had. Two, Honorable Speaker, or three, the question of public participation. In the history of legislative processes in this country since the enactment of the new Constitution, Honorable Speaker, no other bill, none whatsoever, not even the infamous political parties bill, which we took through winnowing, none has had a more rigorous public participation exercise than this finance bill, Honorable Speaker. And I must commend the Chair and the Finance Committee and members who sit in the Finance Committee from both sides of the political divide, because I know there are diligent members of the Finance Committee in Azimio who sat through the public participation, There are many members within the Kenya Kwanza coalition who sat for long hours through public participation. For the first time, Honorable Speaker, I have seen members of parliament, as Honorable Junet was saying, not just sitting up to midnight, sitting even on Sundays. At one point, Honorable Speaker, may the Lord forgive me, I was watching a public participation exercise when I was seated in church somewhere, Honorable Speaker, because these members of the Finance Committee devoted a lot of their time to this public participation. And therefore, the question of public participation, I think, is spent and is something that has been covered. Honorable Speaker, there are other amendments, and I'll draw reference to some amendments I've seen here by the Honorable Makali Mulu, some that seek to delete particular clauses, Honorable Speaker. I think, Honorable Speaker, other than being subjected to the provisions of Article 114, if you are seeking to delete a provision in a bill, the easier way is to vote against that particular provision in the bill. And therefore, you have been accorded the opportunity, since the provision is still the particular clause, for instance, those that the Honorable Makali Mulu sought to delete. The easier way is when we go to committee, the Honorable Makali Mulu will get an opportunity to prosecute his case as to why he seeks deletion, and convince me and others that we should delete that particular clause. And if we agree with him, we vote in the negative and delete, basically defeat that particular provision, and it will not be there. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, let me in conclusion say that the process of winnowing in the history of this House, I think, is a fact that is known by those who have been here, that the process of winnowing has never been subjected to money bills. And unless we are trying to reinvent that, Honorable Speaker, and I do want, in conclusion, to beg that as much as we are not in a hurry, Honorable Speaker, as the leader of minority says, we have up to midnight. We are in no hurry. But we must also spend the time that we have devoted here up to midnight today, up to midnight tomorrow, up to midnight on Thursday, and hopefully even before 30th, any other day, but we must utilize our time properly. Let us not in any way utilize our time through filibustering and trying to spend time in not a very wise manner, Honorable Speaker. I beg to submit.
Junet.
Mr. Speaker, the cardinal responsibility of this House is to legislate, Mr. Speaker, in Article 95. And Mr. Speaker, we must stop anything that can impede legislation in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the members here have amendments to the finance bill, but they have been told that under Article 114, there must be consultation with the Treasury. But Mr. Speaker, the consultation with the Treasury is supposed to happen between the committee and the Treasury, and not necessarily with the members. And this impedes now members from doing their legislation work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I remember in 2018, in this House, and it's on record, it is in the hands of Mr. Speaker, I brought an amendment to the finance bill, and which was a money bill. And we were amending a clause that was putting, VAT, 16% VAT on fuel, the same thing we are doing today. And Mr. Speaker, at the beginning I was told that this is supposed to be under 114. But the Speaker then was seated on the same chair you are seated today, made a ruling in the afternoon here, and said that let the matter be decided by the members themselves in a voting. And in the end, we agreed that let us come up from 0, we go to 8, and the executive comes from 16, they come to 8, and that's why today we have 8% of VAT on the fuel, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there was no memorandum. There was nothing. We agreed here, and the Speaker ruled that he's exempting that amendment from what Article 114. Why? Because even the Constitution, that 114 says, in the opinion of the Speaker. The Speaker has an opinion. The Speaker has a serious opinion, because he's the one who runs the House. He's the one who is in charge of legislation in this House, Mr. Speaker. He's the one who approves amendments. He's the one who looks at the constitutionality of matters that we bring to this House, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, first, don't lose what the Constitution has given you, which says, in the opinion of the Speaker. It did not say in the opinion of the Minister for Treasury. It's not saying the opinion of the Minister for the PS for Treasury. Mr. Speaker, in your opinion, if a matter, if an amendment is of national interest, of national importance, Mr. Speaker, in your opinion, I beseech you, you should allow, members will do a decision here in one way or the other, Mr. Speaker. The amendment will be voted on and they will decide on one way or the other. But in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let me also add a pick from where the majority leader said, like what Honorable Makali has proposed in terms of deletion. Mr. Speaker, I don't think voting against an amendment is the same as proposing an amendment of deletion, Mr. Speaker. Those are two different things. They are not the same. They are not the same, Mr. Speaker, according to the way I understand it. Deletion means getting rid of that thing in totality, completely out of the bill. But no means it can go either way, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, even deleting you have to, that is why exactly you vote on the amendment and you also vote for the deletion, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, deletion of clauses have been a tradition in this House, Mr. Speaker. The clerk here, before he became the clerk, he was the director of legislation and this other thing, what's called what? Legislation and procedure. And Mr. Speaker has been approving deletions for the last 15 years I've been here, or 10 years I've been here. Delete this, delete that. Why is deletion becoming an issue today? If you don't like that deletion, vote against it also. The way you are saying we vote against the amendment. Mr. Speaker, let us have here free, under the Article 95, freedom of debate and freedom of legislation. Let anybody bring any amendments they want, let it be put on a vote, and if the vote carries, whichever side carries the vote, we agree with it and we move forward. Mr. Speaker, let us not hide ourselves under Article 114. That article is so ambiguous. It's like the one that the executive uses to guard Parliament when we normally pass bills here. They go for assent, they return it with a memorandum, Mr. Speaker, and then you are told to undo that. You have to get 2/3, Article 115. That's another one that has been abused for the last 10 years, Mr. Speaker. It was abused in the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, you see...
There's a point of order from Chepkonga. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, when Honorable Junet Mohammed repeats himself over, he doesn't need to convince anyone. He just filibustering here. What he just needs is to stay to be relevant to what he's saying. But, he looks at the majority leader, then he repeats the same thing he had just said 30 seconds. Mr. Speaker, you should rule him out of order. There's a standing order which is very clear, not being repetitive. And two, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't need to convince us too much. We know where he stands. Just he has to speak for 1 minute, and then he sits down, and then we will deal with the rest, Mr. Speaker.
Junet, finish, Junet.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Chepkonga is my friend, Mr. Speaker. But these 5 years of absence from Parliament, Mr. Speaker, something must be done. But anyway, something must be done, Mr. Speaker. We must do something about it, I think. But let me leave it there. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, in your own wisdom and in your own opinion, Mr. Speaker, I beseech that we allow amendments that have been brought by the members so that we can proceed and vote on them and see how they go, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Murugara. Just take your seat, I'll give you. Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we proceed, we must distinguish between money bills and ordinary bills. And there is clear distinction, even from our own constitution, as to what are money bills and what are ordinary bills. When it comes to standing orders on winnowing, it is very clear, and this is a house of record. We have precedents on where winnowing has been allowed, where harmonization has been allowed by the Speaker. We do not have any precedent in this House where winnowing has been called for and where this House, the Speaker has allowed for winnowing to take place. The reason being, money bills are actually special forms of bills which are contemplated during the budget making process. This is where this House is appropriating money so that the government has revenue for its use. Even where you look at the Constitution, where it is stated in the opinion of the Speaker, it proceeds to say in sub-article 2 that that motion for a matter listed in the definition of a money bill, the Assembly may proceed as per recommendations of the Committee of the House after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. So surely this is not far-fetched when we say we are to seek views of the Cabinet Secretary for finance. It's part of our law. Most important, it's important to say that in the last parliament in which I sat, we did winnowing in the political parties amendment laws, which was in order. We also did it in the security laws, which was in order, but we have never done it in a finance bill. And most important, again, I go to deletions. Deletions in a finance bill are equivalent to successfully opposing a section of that act. Once you oppose successfully, that section is deleted in entirety. This is why we are saying there is no point in having these deletions in the order paper. We simply take it to vote. It carries the day, the deletion succeeds. It fails, the section remains. Therefore, we believe we should be proceeding without these deletions, and most important, the winnowing bit is not relevant to what we have before the House today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to go on record that I've been a member of the Budget Committee since I joined this Parliament for the last 11 years. And one of the key responsibilities of the Parliamentary Budget Office is to determine whether bills are money bills or they don't need to come to the Budget Committee. Once bills are determined to be money bills, Honorable Speaker, the Budget Committee will have to sit and accord a member a chance to present this bill and justify why the bill is important to this country. And on the basis of that, then there will be consultation with the Treasury to determine whether the bill should proceed to the second reading or not. Now, Honorable Speaker, what we have done to this bill, this being a finance bill, automatically all amendments will be money bills. All amendments will relate to money bill because this is a finance bill. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the kind of amendments being proposed by members here, and there are very many, Honorable Speaker, I think what Junaid was saying makes a lot of sense. That we might need to be accorded an opportunity as honorable members who are proposing these amendments to be listened to, so that on the basis of that, then we make a decision whether I need to withdraw my amendment or not. In a situation where you are leading more than 10 honorable members and 2 departmental committees proposing amendments, and we just want to rubbish this kind of amendment by the fact that they relate to Article 114, I think we have been unfair to this House, as a House which makes laws. So, honorable members, for me, we still have up to 30 to pass this bill. I don't think we are late. If it was my opinion, I would have requested that the Speaker accords us an opportunity, maybe up to midnight, as he's saying. Now we can just break and this committee convenes. We go there up to midnight, we present our issues, and then we see our way forward. The other issue is, when I propose to delete a clause, we know this House, matters voting, we lose all our senses. People will just say yes, even when it should be no. Others will be saying no when it should be yes. And on those basis, the only room I have is to delete, so that I'll have an opportunity to prosecute my case, and I hope I will be convincing some on the basis of objectivity and not on the basis of what we have been told to do, honorable members. So, Honorable Speaker, I beg you, if it is possible, you accord these honorable members an opportunity to prosecute our amendments. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair of the committee, I will bring this to a closure soon.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have an advantage of having been a member of the Committee of Finance and National Planning for the entire life of the 12th Parliament, and therefore I have seen the process of the finance bill for the last 5 years, and this the 6th year where I've chaired. Honorable Speaker, on 2 occasions, I actually did not agree with the committee, and I wrote, and it was actually on the order paper, that I move amendment on the finance bill. And those 2 occasions, Honorable Speaker, there was no winnowing that happened for those particular finance bill for the 5 years that I served as a member of the Committee of Finance and National Planning. The Honorable Makani Mulu brings a very interesting debate about money bills and budget committee. So and now that makes it even a little more complicated. Then should therefore those amendments have been sent to the Committee of Budget and Appropriations and not then the Committee of Finance and National Planning? Lastly, Honorable Speaker, most of the amendments that honorable members were bringing, we actually did have a sitting with the committee, and we actually looked at them. And for some of those and most of those amendments were actually being carried in our amendments that you're proposing this particular afternoon, Honorable Speaker. And lastly, every clause, and I would like members to really understand this, that every clause in this particular bill has a financial implication. Last week, we did pass in the Committee of Supply, the appropriations of various categories. I did not see, Honorable Speaker, apart from the allocation for private universities, I did not see any amendment proposing to do a cut in any of the budget proposals that was passed by the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Therefore, to expect, therefore, that the committee would accept particular clauses, or amendment of particular clauses, without consultation on the financial implication, would be committing a budget suicide, if we call it Honorable Speaker, because we have a responsibility. And unfortunately, that responsibility is being carried by the Committee of Finance and National Planning to find resources for projects, for votes that this particular House has agreed on. So I really urge this House, when you come to debate on the revenue measures to finance a budget you members of Parliament have already passed, which I did not see any of the members of Parliament on the other side of this House amending any vote to reduce our expenditures, to come and now reduce how we are going to finance this. We have tried to achieve a deficit of only 718 billion. Therefore, any amendment without consultation on any clause is therefore going to affect our debt and our...
114.
I think, Honorable Speaker, I have made my point. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, for us to make progress, having listened to the issues raised by the minority leader, the response of the majority leader, the Honorable Junet, the Honorable Makali Mulu, the Honorable Murugara, and the Honorable Kimani. First, the issue of Article 114 should be protected and be held as sacrosanct. However, in the opinion of the Speaker, and this is not in any way President setting against 114, having looked at the amendments listed and the clauses in the bill that have attracted the highest proposals for amendments, and these are the following clauses: Clause 2, Clause 24, Clause 33, Clause 34, Clause 36, Clause 43, Clause 76, Clause 78. I will allow proposed amendments on those clauses to proceed regardless. The rest, order. Those of you who have filed amendments, you know the clauses you are amending. In my view, and in consultation with my clerks at the table, the clauses that have attracted the highest proposals for amendment, and it will not be good to lock them out. I want those who have proposed to prosecute them, are clauses 2, 24, 33, 34, 36, 43, 76, 78. I'll allow, regardless of my views on 114, and I want to repeat, this is not a precedent setting. It is a unique situation that I'll allow the House, in the interest of fairness and in the interest of arriving at a consensual bill that takes our country forward. You will be allowed to prosecute your amendments, and Honorable Kimani and Honorable Majority Leader and the rest be available to prosecute this in committee stage. As we go into the committee, of the whole, I want to say the following. Yes, Junet, what is it?
Speaker, in accordance with your ruling, Mr. Speaker, now that has changed the dynamics of our engagement, I'm requesting, Mr. Speaker, that we adjourn for 10 minutes so that we appraise our members on those clauses that you have given. Then we sit down again, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Yes, Ruku. Honorable Ruku.
10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is true, the Crow 71, Mr.